up? Welcome to Speak Now Pro Wrestling. It is December 23rd, and we just saw the second to last ever Raw on the USA Network, because January 6th, it's official. We are going to Raw for 3 hours on Netflix. Santi, let's go ahead and start there. Now that we're getting closer and closer to this date on Netflix, now that we know Raw is going to be 3 hours once again, and then not to mention they just added a 3-hour Smackdown. Santi, as somebody who streams and does a million videos, how are you feeling about this?
That's how I feel about it. 2 hours extra of streaming every single week. It's just going to be such a bigger workload, but it's going to be worth it because it's just going to lead to better programming as well. More opportunities for the people that we don't get to see enough. I know that the Apollo Cruises of the world are rejoicing right now that they get that extra hour, the Blair Davenports of the world. And overall, like, it's just going to be good for everybody that's involved, but it is going to just be so much more, having to keep track of so much more wrestling, not just for us as content creators, but for just the average run-of-the-mill viewer that's just on a couch. If they want to stay up to date with professional wrestling, you need to be able to put aside an extra 2 hours a week, and that's asking a lot.
I feel like Netflix and USA Network are kind of behaving like sister wives, right? Where it's like they're sharing WWE and they're like, oh, I get you on this day, I get you on that day. But if you're making a big hoorah about you on Netflix, we want that extra hour on the USA Network. That's almost what it feels like, right? Like they're trying to please both places at the exact same time. But I don't know. 3 hours on a Friday does make me a little nervous. I was appreciating the 2-hour Raws, but I just knew that the time we went back to Netflix that it was going to go to those 3 hours. So I was thinking, okay, well, enjoy it while you can, because we're going back to 3 hours the second we get back on Netflix. But here's my question to you, Santi, because when we still don't really know too much about this talent transfer window, right? It seems very casual at the moment. Of course, today we did get to see the Bloodline come out on Raw and whatnot, but ideally, what does this look like to you? What does a Raw and SmackDown look like to you? Do you want to see people like your Codys and your Romans and your Punks on both of these shows, or do you prefer to kind of keep it separate and maybe sprinkle one guy here and there every so often?
I kind of like having my cake and eating it too. I do like the idea of having a brand split, because when we have those occasional crossovers, it makes them feel special. What I don't want them to do is go back to what they did at some point in the 2010s, where they just gave up on the brand split. Do you remember the wild card rule, where anyone at any time, any picked person from each brand could show up on the show, and it just ended up being everybody, and it just completely ruined the notion of somebody invading or showing up to somewhere they're not supposed to be. Because when you see somebody appearing on a show that they're not supposed to be on, it has that feeling of it being taboo, that it's naughty, it's cool, right? But if we have that just happening every single week, it does a couple of things. One, it prevents that moment from being like cool and special and taboo. But then two, the whole notion of opening up extra screen time to the people that don't get screen time kind of goes by the wayside, because we're just adding more screen time to give more screen time to the people that already get screen time. So I'm of the mind that less is more when it comes to crossovers. I rather see a proper brand split.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's so funny because I also am for the brand split. And at first, I kind of hated myself for saying that, because I know a lot of people don't like the brand split. And I thought, oh my God, I'm one of those. I've officially been, I've drank the juice. I want the brand split too. But personally, I enjoy it because I do like to follow certain stories on certain shows. But like you, I also want to have my cake and eat it too. And it feels like so does WWE, because I also do think there is a situation where it is fun to see, for example, John Cena's going to be in his final year. How do you pick what show to put him on? Do you put him on SmackDown? Do you put him on Raw? So it allows for people like John Cena, maybe Roman Reigns, maybe CM Punk, those types of stars to ever so often appear on certain shows, and maybe especially when you want that little extra ratings boost. But in regards to Netflix, it's so exciting. How do you leave people out of that? Like, I can't imagine not having Cody there, not having Roman, CM Punk, all of these big stars. And of course, for the first show, they're going all in and putting everybody there. But moving forward, I would personally, if I was on the freaking roster, Santi, I would have a little bit of FOMO and be like, I want to be on Raw on Netflix.
Exactly. I think that there would be FOMO. Like if I'm somebody that's exclusively to SmackDown, I'd be, especially like once you figure out what the viewership numbers are going to be like. Now, I don't think that Raw Netflix is going to be doing 65 million viewers like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson did, but I think it's going to be significantly higher than what they're going to do on traditional network television. I was in Colombia, right? Wrestling isn't big there. But part of the reason why it's not big is because in Colombia, no one knows when it airs. No, it was still on traditional airwaves in traditional cable, but I didn't know. No one knew how to find it. But if it's on Netflix, if it's all of a sudden plastered on your front page, people are going to click on it out of curiosity and maybe become new fans of the show. And that's going to happen in the United States, in the continental United States as well. So you're going to just have by default probably a handful of million more eyeballs on Monday Night Raw. And if I'm on SmackDown, I'm probably going to get FOMO of like, oh, look at the merch sales I might be missing out on for having less eyeballs on my show over here. But at the end of the day, FOMO aside, I do feel like a brand split is still the way to go. But the first 4 months of the year are weird anyway, because a huge chunk of these Monday Night Raws that are going to be on Netflix are going to be pre-taped or appear live at like 2 p.m. because they've got that like 2-month stretch in Europe, and they're going to be airing live when they're in Europe. So even like just the traditional like sit down and watch Raw experience is going to be different because now people can just watch it whenever they want. And I do think that on-demand vaudeville is going to give Monday Night Raw a handful of million more viewers across the world.
I hope it does, man, because you mentioned, like, for example, going to Colombia. And I remember, like, whenever I go to, like, any place that, like, in Europe or something, sometimes I'll pop up my phone and I'll forget, right? I'll be late in my hotel and I'll forget and I'll pop up my Hulu app or my HBO Max or something, right? And then it says, oh, this does not work. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not at home. I can't watch this. But then I go to Old Reliable, click on my little Netflix avatar, and instantly Netflix is on and I can watch my programming because Netflix is scattered, more so all around the world. But here's Santi, I'm curious. In Colombia, when you tell people you cover pro wrestling for a living, what's the reaction like? Like, what do people assume that you do?
The reaction is pretty universally, "¿Qué?" like, what is that? What? And then I like kind of have to like explain the business out of it. It's like, this is how it works, advertisers, yada yada. And they're like, oh, okay, that's still stupid, but okay, we understand. That's generally how the discussion went with my Colombian family. Mostly because like if you're there and you're not evangelizing and praying to the gods of football, of soccer, then they don't care. That's the only sport that runs deep in the blood of Colombians. Professional wrestling like isn't a thing. Out of curiosity, I like looked up like, are there any Medellin? Like Medellin is a city of 8 million people. Like it's a big metropolis. I looked up to see if there were like indie wrestling or anything there. Nothing. Like nothing at all.
Oh my God. But no, just to kind of show, because, okay, so I have a back, obviously I'm Mexican, but here's the thing. And, lucha is super, I mean, it's in the culture. Like it's in the culture to be, a lucha fan, all of it. But even then, like when I told my grandparents, like, oh yeah, I do this thing on YouTube and I talk about wrestling, they don't understand it. Like they don't understand YouTube, but it's the cutest thing ever because they'll go and they'll brag to everybody like, oh yeah, Denise, platica de las luchas. Like that's what she does. And they put me over and everything. But I'm like, it's so funny because they don't understand what YouTube is.
You did not just use the wrestling term my grandparents and family put me over.
But they do though.
How brain rotted of a wrestling fan are you that you can't just say, oh, they compliment me. They put me over.
We speak in wrestling terms now, Santi, and I hear myself all the time, like where I'll tell somebody like, oh yeah, that person's over, like, and I'll be talking about something so freaking different, nothing wrestling related. But does that not happen to you where you use wrestling terms in your everyday life because they apply?
It does happen. When I get home and my dog is excited, I'm like, yeah, the dog popped. Look at that pop from the dog.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean? You can't help it. It just happens, all right? The wrestling fan in us is just stuck there. All right, we got a couple of super chats here to get into. We got Sheldon Jackson who says the Triple H booking problem. He keeps feuds going way longer than they need to be. I'm so over Liv and versus Rhea and Finn versus Damian. And like Elsa said, let it go. Ooh, I don't disagree with this. I do think some of this stuff has gone a little long. Thankfully, it looks like we're about to wrap up Liv and Rhea on Raw and Netflix. But yeah, the Finn and Damien stuff, I wanted that to kind of go away. We sort of resurfaced back today the Chad Gable Otis stuff. That didn't feel like we needed to go back to that. But it happens for some storylines, not all storylines. But yeah, we could kind of wrap some stuff up a little faster. Thank you so much to Sheldon Jackson. We got Joe Compton here who says they need to keep the brand split and make the crossovers happen. Very few and far between. Make them actually mean something. It is easier said than done, though. It definitely is. And in a way, like part of me wants to have some sort of like rules in place for this whole transfer window thing. But at the same time, I know that if they introduce rules, suddenly they're not going to follow them because WWE will set the rules and then not follow their own rules.
That's pretty true. Like that's just a universal thing with wrestling.
Yeah, it really is. Joe, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you a whole lot. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the big highlights of what went down on this show. So we kick things off with Drew McIntyre and Sami Zayn. And Santi, I wasn't expecting the direction that we went in with this. We kind of went into more of a deep, personal type of feud, promo, but it really led to something special because Drew was talking about how he unfortunately lost a family member. And I was like, oh man, like, we didn't know anything about this. And then he kind of morphed it into the storyline where he starts talking about how no one checked in on him with that. Nobody knew. Nobody called him after his bout with CM Punk in the Hell in a Cell. And he's basically, bitter and angry that nobody gave a damn. Sami Zayn comes down and tells him, like, dude, clearly we didn't know what you were going through. We all assumed that you were in Scotland just trying to take a break after what happened. But then we got what I considered probably one of the best Sami Zayn promos, where he starts going off and talking about how Drew McIntyre isn't the only person that goes through these hardships. He isn't the only person that's going through, life problems like what Drew McIntyre just went through. And he goes off and he cuts this really great promo where I'm thinking, damn, Sami Zayn, we need to talk more about him as being one of the top promos in the company because I don't feel like we really mention Sami Zayn's name with good promo skills as often as we do wrestlers like CM Punk, right? That's somebody you always mention with good promos. But Sami, man, this promo that he cut tonight, it was on fire. It was passionate. He got me like really riled up here. I thought this was great.
Yeah, I think the reason why we haven't been talking about Sami Zayn too much when it comes to like being a great promo, because he is just that he's been so predictable with his promos, especially when he was Intercontinental Champion. Like it was pretty rudimentary what he would do every single time. It was always what I call the holier than thou promo. The you're better than this, Ludwig. You're better than this. Oh, you're better than this, Ilya. You're better than this, Chad. Every single time. Like that's the
He
type
just
of
did that
promo.
to Seth. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. It's so formulaic, but this, especially in the time of year, if you think about it, like it hits home with a lot of people. Like the being away from family, going through hardships. It feels like it's magnified when you're talking about the holidays. But yeah, like we didn't know what Drew McIntyre was going through. But exactly what you said, like Sami Zayn kind of pointing out the obvious but also not so obvious elephant in the room that people go through this type of stuff, that people all over the world go through this type of stuff, but that everybody gets up and they continue to persevere through, and that we are lucky to be WWE superstars even if we go through these hardships. I love that Sami Zayn, like also mentioned some of the things that he's missed throughout the years because of being a WWE superstar, his funerals, birthdays, weddings, and whatnot. I really felt like that promo helped humanize the situation and helped humanize WWE wrestlers as a whole, which actually, funnily enough, in turn, helped humanize Drew McIntyre as well and kind of helped me understand like what like his anger, his sadness, his sorrow that he's going through during this time of year when he went back to Scotland for and dealing with that major loss in his family. I thought that the promo between the two was fantastic. The only thing that I like chuckled at and I laughed at was when like Drew McIntyre is looking at the camera, cutting this like super sad, angry, intense promo. And then Sami Zayn's music hits. It just doesn't fit. Like the
That is true.
as Drew McIntyre's like pouring his heart out to us.
I love that. And he was making a threat too by that point. He was like, sleep with one eye open. And then we get Sami Zayn. See?
Oh.
It's amazing. All right, so we do get fast forward to the ending of the show because we do get this main event that kind of ended in a whole lot went down here. So with Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre, this match was made off of the opening promo, and we get a fine match here that comes down to the final moments, which was Haluva Kick versus Claymore. Who is going to basically, draw first? And it ended up being Drew McIntyre hitting Sami with the Claymore, and that's how he's able to get the win. But after this, he continues the assault on Sami. Of course, Jay comes out to have his back. But once Jay goes out there, we had seen Solo's bloodline come out, and then they attack. So Drew leaves. He leaves. He doesn't care. He's like, I'm out. I don't give a damn. Like, this isn't my problem. He bounces, and we end up seeing Solo's bloodline basically take out both Sami and Jay. What did you think about the fallout of the end of the show?
I thought it was cool. I'm still a little bit weirded out by Drew McIntyre's I guess like inability to also kind of call out Solo for all the awful things that he's done. I feel like it's kind of weird that he's kind of okay with Solo, even though he did threaten him and say, like, eventually I'm coming after you too. So I feel like that's a little bit odd. That's a little bit weird. I think for me, what's the most weird about all of this, Denise, is that it almost feels like nothing was accomplished after War Games. What was accomplished after War Games?
Drew McIntyre being pissed. All this was them celebrating their War Games victory, and Drew and Seth having the exact same reaction at home,
I
being
guess.
angry at their television. That's all it's really accomplished, which I guess you can say is a lot, right? Because that's
It
moving the
is.
story
It
forward.
is like it's considering like they're two major driving forces in narrative in WWE right now. But I'm just kind of wondering like what is the point of Solo attacking Jay and Sami at the moment? Like where is that going, considering we know that Solo has this direct path to his match against Roman Reigns at Raw Netflix? Doesn't seem to me like that builds that up anymore. So I'm just kind of asking the question into the ether. It's not a direct question to you, Denise. It's kind of a question to the universe. Where is this going? This Solo Sikoa attacking the members of the original bloodline still when we're past War Games.
So let me try to think about this because I'm thinking, okay, for Drew, we know that he mentioned CM Punk and Roman, right? So clearly at some point they got to circle back into that. Not so much CM Punk because he's kind of already been there, done that, but more so Roman Reigns. I think he's mentioned Roman Reigns a lot to the point where you're like, okay, are we going to pull the trigger? Are we going to do Drew and Roman Reigns at some point, right? But then you also still have the Seth CM Punk stuff. Okay, cool. We got that taken care of. But then Solo Sikoa. What is Solo Sikoa's direction after Roman Reigns?
Great question. I don't know. Mostly because I feel like this is Solo Sikoa's climax of his story, the climax of what we're building up to. And it feels, even though it's not, because obviously like Raw Netflix debut is such a huge thing, but just kind of traditionally when you look at the calendar year, it feels premature to hit climaxes this early on in the year. And we're doing it with Solo and we're doing it with Punk and Rollins. So I think me, you, and wrestling fans, we kind of need to like rewire our brains for these first 4 months of the year and what is supposed to be expected as a major climax of a story beat.
Yeah, it feels to me like personally, I want to see Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa sort of wrap up as Solo being Roman's as being Roman's feud, like his enemy, his main target. I want that to be the end. And I know it's not the end because we're still going to continue with the bloodline. At some point, The Rock's got to get involved. I can't imagine that he doesn't. And if he doesn't, then it kind of leaves a lot of people's predictions kind of in the mud, to be honest, because I think a lot of people are predicting The Rock to be part of this. But I just, I don't want Solo Sikoa to be the only focus Roman Reigns has. The second we kick into Netflix era, the second we begin, on the road to WrestleMania, I want to see Roman Reigns feud and be constantly working with people that are of his star power, of his stature. Like that's what I want to see. And so I feel like Solo Sikoa, sure, this is fine and this is going to be what it is, but it's not the main event. It's not the main entree to me. I want to start seeing Roman Reigns, either feud with CM Punk or whatever it is that his WrestleMania plan is going to be, whether it's Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, or The Rock. I want by the start of Netflix to begin that particular portion of the story. I want, hopefully, and maybe it's asking too much, but I want by the end of Raw Netflix, I want to be sitting here going, all right, I know where we're going with this. Here we go. Roman Reigns and so. This is where we're headed for WrestleMania. And maybe it's asking too much, but I do think this should be the end for him and Solo.
I would agree, but then it begs the question that started this conversation in the first place. What's next for Solo? Is he just sort of hovering? Is it an internal fight with the members of the bloodline, Solo and Jacob Fatu? If this ends here at Raw Netflix, the sky's the limit for Roman, right? Roman, Drew McIntyre, SummerSlam would be crazy. You can name like 10 different people that you'd want to see feuds for Roman Reigns, but I can't name anybody that I was like, that's the next Solo Sikoa feud I desperately want. So I'm a little bit nervous in that regard. I'm having a tough time kind of seeing past the fog of war as to what's next for Solo Sikoa, because it's easy for Roman. Maybe not like easy to predict immediately what's the next thing, what's the next story for Roman, but the answer for Roman is somebody. For Solo Sikoa, I don't know.
For Solo Sikoa, I think he could just work with other guys like LA Knight, for example. He's the one that keeps popping into my brain. Maybe it's because they recently had the whole bit on Smackdown, so maybe that's why he's popping into my brain. But guys like that, right? Guys that do have, buzz, they do have, a name. They aren't exactly going to be feuding with Roman Reigns tomorrow or next month or by the end of the year, but maybe feuding with guys like that where Solo Sikoa, I think, can find different aspects of himself to continue growing as a performer and hopefully at some point get over with the crowd. I'm sure he's gotten over with a couple of people, sure, fine, but he hasn't gotten over to that extent just yet. So I do think that seeing him feud with guys like LA Knight, I don't know, somebody of that level, then maybe we can just start to get the ball rolling in a different direction for Solo Sikoa. I just don't want him to always, I don't want it always to be Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa. I'm ready to move on.
That goes with the super chat that you read earlier, right? Like Triple H loves his long-term storytelling. He loves taking a storyline that could be over in 3 months and dragging it out into a year and a half. So although I think Raw Netflix is a natural conclusion for for Roman versus Solo, I also wouldn't be surprised if it's not.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. I'm getting my hopes up way too high, but we'll see what happens. All right, we got Toby here who says, we have had more double tapings recently. How does that look when it's 3 hours each? Might lose a lot of the live crowd. Dude, I didn't even think about that, man. But those shows be long because Santi, I used to do I've gone to so many of the live events for AEW where they would do those really, really long tapings. Like I remember I would get there and watch, I think it was like AEW Dark, and then they would do the AEW Dynamite show, right? And then immediately afterwards, it was like, oh, we got Dynamite and then ROH matches filming. And I would sit there and I'd be like, oh shit, this is a really long time. And even though I care about some of these things, I'm a little tired now.
And you got Rampage.
Exactly. And then now think about it like this, but over on the opposite side of it for Raw and whatnot.
Yeah. It's gonna be a lot, but they've done pre-recorded 3-hour shows for Raw before. The thing is that they used to just fill them up with recaps, so expect that.
Yeah, we'll have a good time covering those recaps. Toby, thank you so much for the super chat. We got Stephen Marchuli here who says Sammy Drew promo was the best part of the show. Notice how Drew said only one person called him, but didn't say who. That's right. When I was listening to him say the promo, I said who, and then I got distracted by everything else that was going on that I never circled back to who was that one person that actually called him. And you know who I thought it might be? Kind of odd, but I thought maybe it might be Seth Rollins, that would be the who.
See, I was thinking Wade Barrett, but that might be just so not really interesting, and they wouldn't really build anything really. But Seth Rollins would be interesting, but why? Why Seth specifically?
The only reason why I think Seth is because remember last week when he had that whole confrontation with Drew and how everybody's saying, oh, yeah, you're like Drew, you're like Drew. And he's like, I'm not like Drew. But it seemed like they kind of they seem like they have more in common than they care to admit. And so
Mm,
part of me makes me wonder if maybe he called him because he also hates CM Punk.
hey, could be.
That's the only reason. I can't think of anybody else. Or maybe it was Nick Aldis.
Maybe. I mean, I can't. I didn't even pick up on that, honestly. Steven, the guy that sent in the super chat, I didn't even pick up on the fact that he said only one person and that it didn't actually get touched on. I'm sure that's something that will have to develop into something.
Right. Watch it be Nick Aldis. Like, oh yeah, the general manager called in to check on me. That'd be so lame. Like such a lame turnout. But Steven, thank you so much for the super chat and for bringing that up. We got Matt Logan here who says, Santi, is that a PS5?
It
Is it
is,
like
yes.
it, right?
That is a sticker of a bodybuilding Magikarp. If anybody follows Pokemon,
Oh, okay.
I know
Not
Denise doesn't. Denise is
no.
not a weeb. We've talked about this term before. A weeb.
I have no follow-up to you saying Pokemon. I'm just like, yeah, nice. Thumbs up. I'm so happy you're happy. That's all I've got to contribute. Matt, thank you so much for the super chat. All right, well, let's go ahead and keep it going here. I want to go ahead and get into the New Day because that's been like such a big facet of like ever since you and I started this show. I mean, God, we started our first show the day that they turned on Big E. And now here we are. The big things to take away from this. Dominik Mysterio, even dirty Dominik Mysterio, does not side with the New Day, okay? And he didn't even like Big E, according to him. All right. Secondly, Rey Mysterio tried to give him an out. He tried to get them to apologize so that they can get back into the locker room, but they don't think they did anything wrong. They then go out into the crowd. Well, they go into the crowd, and turns out Kofi Kingston's mom is there, Mama Kingston, and she's there looking all sad and disappointed in her son. However, Kofi doesn't see it. He thinks she's sad and disappointed because the crowd is booing them. Turns out she's ashamed of him and she walks out and she leaves him with his arms wide open. And that's it. Kofi Kingston's own mother has turned on him. Santi, I was waiting for her to slap him. That's what I thought was going to happen. I was like, slap him, slap him. Like, this is where we're going. But they didn't go that way. I can imagine that's not something every mom would want to do. So I get it. I get it. But this was fun. I just love that they included his mom in this.
I mean, if I'm her, I would also be mad. Kofi, you make that main roster WWE money and you still only got her a middle seat on a 20-hour flight. He talked about how she flew in a middle seat as if like that's a badge of honor. Kofi, you could have gotten her first class, a window, an aisle seat, and you got her a middle seat. Of course she's mad, brother. But I thought that was hilarious. I thought that I could see from a mile away that that's where it was going to go. And even though I saw the punchline coming a mile away, I still cackled laughing. I think that is so funny that even the worst of the worst, Dominik Mysterio, thinks that like you guys are messed up. And even the one that's supposed to provide unconditional love, your own mother, can't work past what Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods did. I think that it's great. Also, I had like PTSD from my own girlfriend refusing to apologize for things that she clearly is in the wrong for. That's how my girlfriend typically behaves, and I saw it with Kofi Kingston. I didn't do anything wrong. What are you doing? I'm not apologizing. I go through that on a daily basis.
But see, Santi, you're already messing up, by the way, because you know when it comes down to it, the woman's always
Oh,
right,
I'm in the
Santi.
wrong. I know. It's
You're in
my
the
fault.
wrong.
I'm the asshole every time.
Yes. Like, that's
Yes.
it. You just got to live with it. And once you learn to accept it and continue it on, everything will be much smoother. Or sometimes, though, not all the time. but that's the way
Sure.
it works. The way it
Ah,
works.
yes. Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, so there you have it. The New Day are still in bad terms, and we'll see what they continue to do here. But I'm having a good time with this. I feel like they're pulling out all of these creative facets to just tell this story in a different with a different approach, and you can tell that they're thinking of different things because they know they got something special with this story, and you can tell that they're thinking of different ways to present it to the audience, something that we haven't seen before. So I thought this was really, really great. But now let's go ahead and move on. We got Dexter Lumis versus The Miz. And Santi, I think I think you can predict how I felt about this
Oh, you
because
hated this. You know what's funny? As it was happening, I was in the back of my mind. I was like, "Oh, Denise fucking hates this."
dude, let me tell you, first of all, and they could have even okay, let's say they did everything that they did today. I thought had they at least just tweaked some things, it could have been better. Because okay, yeah, Dexter Lumis versus The Miz. All right. This match ends in a freaking DQ. Dexter Lumis gets the win via DQ, right? Because we end up seeing the freaking Final Testament come out and help out The Miz and blah, 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 right? And then after this, he summons the Wyatt Six. The Wyatt Six come out and they brawl. Okay, great, fine. I think they should have tweaked some things though, all right? Hear me out. They should have had Dexter Lumis, considering that this was his first singles match since joining the group. They should have had him go out there, look freaking explosive and menacing and scary as hell, defeated The Miz because The Miz can take a loss, okay? They did not need to protect The Miz whatsoever. Defeated The Miz, and then they could have done everything that they did afterwards. Have the Final Testament come out, attack Dexter Lumis after he had already gotten this win, and then had the Wyatt Six come out and then continued as is. Like everything that they did afterwards, fine, cool, whatever. But personally, I did not see why they needed to protect The Miz from taking from getting a win, from taking a loss from Dexter Lumis. That was my one big irk, because to me, the way you're gonna get the group over, of course, is having matches, but even when there's singles matches, these are our introductions into these people. This is our intro. Why couldn't we have Dexter Lumis go in there and look like a scary motherfucker? Like that's exactly what they should have done. And then they didn't. They just made him look mid. And I'm like, dude, he's supposed to be scary. Am I scared of him right now? No, I'm not. So you're just taking away from the group. So that's the only thing I would have tweaked and made it just a little bit different.
I think that your criticism is fair. However, all right, and feel free to call me out because maybe I'm lying, maybe I'm not in the right here. I feel, all right, Denise, if they had done all of those things that you mentioned, you still would have been like, this was ass. You still would have hated it because you just don't like this. I know this isn't for you. And even if they had done all of the things that you feel that would have made this better, I still think you would have hated it. To be fair, this wasn't good at all. Like from head to toe, this wasn't good. And I've been somebody that's been more on the positive side of this story. Like we're like completely two separate sides of the coin here. I still think that you would have hated it either way. This has sort of felt a little bit lifeless and soulless, which is not something that the Wyatt Six can afford. I feel like if there's something that the Wyatt Six can provide in terms of a storyline, in terms of a segment, in terms of a match, it should be soul. It should be something unique. It should feel different. But this just sort of felt like a filler segment of a filler lower mid card segment, and that's bad for everybody.
Yeah, it is. No, but here's the thing. Look, yeah, it may not have been my favorite thing, but at least I would have been able to say something positive. Had they done what I said, I would have been like, oh man, Dexter Lumis looked really good. I was very happy for him. Maybe I would have talked about his NXT pass and how this is looking like a better opportunity for him and how I thought he had a shelf life, but look at him go. I could have came out here with that direction. I could have found something to say positively about this. I have nothing other than Nikki Cross looks really fucking cool. That's
That was
it.
cool.
I've got nothing else to contribute to this that's positive.
Yeah, what's the long play here? Because we've already seen the faction match, we've already seen the two go to war, we've already seen the Final Testament win. Is it running it back again and then just having the Wyatt Six win this time around, or is this potentially setting us up for Alexa Bliss returning down the line? Because this needs something. This needs a jolt of life for it to become something interesting. And the only jolt of life that I can think of right now is eventually adding a difference maker. And I think that that difference maker and that star power could be an Alexa Bliss. I don't know.
Would you even want to see Alexa Bliss back in this act? Like in this act?
No, I wouldn't. I'm just sort of talking based on what I see, like at face value.
Because I'm part of me is going, I think in the beginning, right? When they made their debut, if let's just say the third week or something, Alexa Bliss came out, I'll be like, yeah, this is great. Like, woo, what an awesome way. Now, given what we've been seeing from the group, I'm kind of thinking, hey, Alexa girl, let's move you over here. Let's have you do something
Uh,
different. You know, you've been gone for a long time. We miss you. We like you. Maybe go back to being Little Miss Bliss or something along those lines. That's
I would
totally
prefer that.
different.
I
Me
would
too.
prefer
Me
that.
too. So again, had you asked me in the beginning, I would have said I'm all for it. If you ask me now, not so much. Did we already do Uncle Howdy and what's his face, Karen Cross? Did we already get that
Like
match?
that match?
Yeah,
No,
singles.
no.
We
We
haven't,
ju- we
right?
we had the faction warfare that had Uncle Howdy and Karrion Cross in it, but we haven't had like that proper one-on-one match.
Right. So maybe we can get that. I don't know, call it a day, and whoever wins there, we kind of just move on with our lives. I don't know. Because even the same thing, what's next for the Final Testament? What's next for the Wyatt Six? I feel like Triple H is kind of trying to decide which group is getting more over in this scenario so that he could end up pushing this group. I feel like he's still trying to figure it out, but maybe that's just me thinking that.
And in Denise's eyes, the answer is neither.
Done, finished. I mean, I would prefer for it to be the Wyatt Six. I don't want the Wyatt Six to like be a flop. I want them to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. It's just that it almost feels like this is going nowhere, like it's dead end. And I'm already ready for something else, but I already know that the chat is probably like, let Papa Age cook. All right, sure. Let's see where this goes. Why not?
Okay, let me ask you a question, Santi. Have you ever driven down a street, saw that it was a dead end, and usually the normal person either doesn't go down that street because it's a dead end, or maybe they go down the street but then they leave? Have you ever gone down the exact same dead end street multiple times and just kept going and going and going?
No.
No. Well, that's what they're doing right now with Damian Priest and the Judgment Day and Dominik Mysterio because they just keep entering that same dead end street with Damian Priest and the Judgment Day. Damian Priest versus Dominik Mysterio. Damian Priest gets the win via DQ. The Judgment Day beat down Damian Priest. We got Santa Claus JD McDonough. We got Carlito under the ring spitting out his apple. They need to do multiple things here. One, be done with Damian Priest and the Judgment Day Association. Finn Balor, even though I love to see him argue like brother and sister with Liv Morgan, Finn Balor needs to go about his day, move on, tell a different story, be completely disconnected from the Judgment Day. And I'm sorry, I'm just like so done with this. But the cool thing here, though, there was a cool thing. Here's a pro. We saw Damian Priest maybe start an alliance here with the War Raiders, and I thought that was kind of cool. It's different. It looks cool. I'm intrigued enough.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm intrigued by the fact that we haven't seen this before. Damian Priest, Bondage Undertaker teaming up with accountant dads by day, angry bikers by night, the War Raiders. I'm curious where that goes and what's the point of it. But to me, Denise, I feel like you're not going to like it because I think it's just to further explore even more Judgment Day battles and Judgment Day feuds, because that's what Damian said. Hey, if you guys are going to go to war, if you're going to go to war with the Judgment Day, I got your back. Like, oh God, go to war with the Judgment Day. You've been at war with the Judgment Day forever, brother. Move on, do something else. You're too interesting to be stuck in this in this Groundhog Day of the same match in the same feud over and over and over again. And frankly, like I've already seen Damian Priest destroy and maul the Judgment Day every single week. Like it's like clockwork. It's not ever a thought in my mind that he's in danger ever, because he 1v5s them every single week. And Finn Balor at this point, unless they do a hard reset on him, unless they pull a Shinsuke Nakamura on him, I'm just not going to see him as a dangerous threat at all. They already fumbled this feud because of the long-term Triple H storytelling of, hey, let's just take forever to actually hit on major story beats. Like, the first match between those two should not have been 2 months after the heel turn. It should have been a Bash in Berlin 3 weeks later. But they waited until Bad Blood. Then the feud was already cold and stale. And then the result of having Damian win made that even more cold and stale. And then they waited 2 more fucking months, Denise, for match 2. Like, you're taking too long here.
Oh no, we lost
Boring ass
Santi.
result.
Oh, there you are. All right, you're back here. We lost you there for a second, but you're good. You're back. You weren't gone for too long. You weren't gone like a long
Point. This sucks
storytelling.
ass.
No, but we got your point. We got your point. We got most of it. It was, hey, man, we need to wrap this up. But it's like, I want to see Damian Priest feud with other people on this show, you know? I mean, I thought he was his coolest when he kind of broke off from the Judgment Day and he was doing the Terror Twins bit with Rhea Ripley. I thought that was fun. I felt like he felt really like a cool person. Like, oh, look at him with Rhea Ripley and he's getting, I don't know how to say this, but he's getting the Rhea Ripley rub, man. Everybody likes to see him partnered up with her and they're best friends. And all the Rhea fans were supporting Damian Priest because he was Rhea Ripley's best friend. And that came with a lot. And he was coming off of when the Gunther feud had been its hottest. And now it's just kind of like, why would you take those steps back, man? You had gone a couple steps forward and then you went backwards. So I do think that we need to kind of move on here. And unfortunately, I think of people that I want to see him feud with, but they're kind of already in other programs. Like, I would have loved to see Damian Priest and Seth Rollins. I think that could have been cool. But he's obviously, you know, in something else. But it is one of those things where who else is another option for Damian Priest to feud with right now, if not the Judgment Day?
Well, here's the thing, like, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anybody that makes logical sense right now, but that's not because of a lack of potential opponent. It's just because of a lack of imagination that WWE has driven into our skulls by basically forcing Damian into the same story in the same feud for the past 6 months. It's the only thing right now at face value that makes sense for Damian, but it sucks. And people are ready to move on. If they wanted to do Damian Priest versus Chad Gable, I'm in. It's different. Something we haven't seen before. Why not? But no, they're just insistent on doing the same thing over and over and over again.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I was thinking, okay, Damian Sheamus, Damian
Why
Pete
not?
Dunne, Damian, oh my gosh, I just thought about somebody
Ludwig.
else. Ludwig, yeah, thank you. Like, wow, right now, while Ludwig is kind of also sort of waiting around for something, hell, Damian Priest, freaking Braun Breaker, why not? I mean, come on. Yeah, there are other options for people and things and stories to tell. I think that you're right with the creativity. It needs to just like be exploited a little bit more. All right, we got Dion here with a very nice super chat. He says, I subscribed to Santi's channel today and watched 8 of his videos. Thank you, Denise, for giving us great content and picking a great co-host.
The best
Hell
co-host.
yeah. Oh, watch out, guys. Watch out. Dion, thank you so much for supporting not just myself, but also supporting Santi. That's really, really kind of you. Thank you for the super chat. All right, let's keep it going. Akira Tozawa, Chad Gable. I don't really have much to say about this other than it looks like we're resurfacing back Otis and Chad Gable's feud.
Why?
I don't know.
Why? Denise, do you see this? Do you see what I'm doing here? Do you see
Yes.
closed hands? All right.
Yes.
That's closed. That's a window. It's closed. It closed months ago. The window for Otis and Chad Gable has been closed and shut for like half a year at this point. I don't get it. I don't get why you wouldn't do this when people wanted it. When people actually wanted this to be, dude, people were wanting this at SummerSlam. That's how hot this feud was. People wanted this at PLEs. Do you remember? Like, it was like Clash at the Castle and I think it was King of the Ring, where we kept having those moments of like Otis about to turn on Chad Gable and the
Yes, for the
crowd going
longest.
crazy, and then they just never paid it off. I'm sorry, you missed the window. The window for Otis versus Chad Gable to be a really fun summer blockbuster popcorn feud is closed. You can't revisit it again. It's gone. The magic has
Dude,
left.
those reactions from those moments that you were talking about, people were like, "Oh my god, it's coming! Oh my god! Oh my god, it's coming!" And we hadn't seen that in a while. Like the people were truly invested in Otis and Chad Gable. And yeah, you're right. That window is shut. Where I'm thinking it was crazy because I mean, I remember the conversation after that was okay, Chad Gable's moving on. He's, working with the WYATT Six. Great. Otis wasn't doing anything. And Otis was really over after that whole bit that he did with Chad Gable, but nothing happened.
Nothing.
Nothing. So now it's like, I mean, he could have done something with Bronson Reed. When he was doing the whole monster stuff with him and Braun, they could have thrown in an Otis match in there with Bronson Reed, something like that. Even something so small like that could have been huge. But I mean, I don't know, man. It doesn't seem like there's really all that much going on with Otis at the moment. But I don't think that they should revisit him and Chad Gable again. I think it's gonna irritate people. I don't know if they can necessarily get reinvested the way that they were previously with this story.
Yeah, match aside, like I actually enjoyed Chad Gable versus Tozawa. That was cool. It was like a quasi squash match, but not like Tozawa had some good offense. But I love like the final 3 minutes of Chad Gable just obliterating Tozawa. But again, you should have just done this 6 months ago when people wanted it.
I feel ya. All right, we got one big thing to talk about left, and this is the thing that I was like, yes, yes, yes. All right, so unfortunately, Kairi is being replaced in the Intercontinental Championship, but fortunately, it was with someone that I think a lot of people want to see win. I wanted this person to win the tournament, but when I saw they weren't in the tournament, I thought, well, now they can't win. But ladies and gents, we are now having Iyo Sky in this tournament. She replaced Kairi and she faced off against Natalya and Alba Fire. Had a very fun match here. We even saw a double sharpshooter from Natalya, which was executed perfectly. But Iyo Sky gets her win. She advances and she's going to go on to face Lyra Valkyra. And I think for the most part, I think we're going to see Dakota Kai versus Iyo Sky in the finals.
That would be sick. It makes me kind of sad that they're having to once again burn Iyo versus Lyra in a semifinal, because holy smokes, their semifinal for Queen of the Ring, that match was incredible. Like I think it might be a top 10 TV match of the entire year. So they're running it again. But I don't think it's going to be the same result as last time. I think that it's going to be Iyo versus Dakota Kai. And what does that open the door for? Does that open the door for Dakota Kai to turn heel? We've seen a Dakota Kai heel turn before in NXT, and it's one of those NXT heel turns that a lot of those NXT Black and Gold fans evangelize as one of the best heel turns in NXT Black and Gold history. Could they run something like that again? Could a heel singles Dakota Kai be something that you want to see, Denise?
Honestly, yes. You want to know why? Because I think Dakota Kai, she did so good, right? When she was with the Damage Control and, she was pretending like she was Bailey's friend, but in reality, she was also, against Bailey. That was great too. But, she was gone due to injury. She came back and she's just been Dakota Kai. That's it. Like there hasn't been anything else on top of that. She's just Dakota Kai. And I think that she gets really over as a babyface, which just hasn't happened just yet, or she does something, bust a DIY to get a little interesting and turns heel. I think that should happen for Dakota. I think we need a little movement there because there's really nothing to get excited about right now other than, yeah, we're happy she's back, but what else? Now, what do you have to bring to the table? So if we did see her turn heel, I think that would be phenomenal. But I'm so happy Iyo's in this. I'm so happy that I think Iyo's defeating Dakota. I think Iyo's going to be the inaugural Intercontinental Champion. I feel like that would be the right call to make because that would be the perfect way to really kick off this reign and also polar opposite from what we're seeing with the United States Championship, right? Where you had somebody like Chelsea that's more on the comedic side, and then you have Iyo who's a little bit more of a serious wrestler. So you have two very different dynamics and these inaugural champions that just came, practically at the exact same time. So I feel like with Iyo being Intercontinental Champion, that could be the start of something great. Like there's a lot of people that want to see Iyo win the Royal Rumble. Obviously, we got that tease with Iyo and Rhea Ripley. So it feels like this is the right thing to do. And I'm honestly glad we're going to see her and Lyra again. I'm glad because I love their matches together. I think they work so well. So I'm actually looking forward to revisiting that.
Have they announced at all if the final is taking place on the inaugural episode of Raw Netflix? Have they talked about this yet?
I don't think they have.
No, they haven't, right? But that's the
No.
place I'd wanna see it.
Yeah, that would make the most sense unless they save it for like the second week, right? Because you still got 2 more matches that are gonna have to take place. You got the how many Raws do you got? You got that one more Raw. You could do the both matches there and then do the finals on the Netflix Raw. So it is possible. Yes,
It
it
is
is possible.
possible. It is
Yes.
po You know what? I think they did announce both matches for next episode of Monday Night Raw. I saw the graphic of, like, the final 4, um, and, like, they use, like, their renders and stuff. I think they did announce it for the next episode.
This is the graphic that they put up, but yeah, I don't know if I see that. Hopefully right now we can get like a double check on that, but yeah, I don't know exactly when the finals are.
So in an ideal world for you, the final would be Io versus Dakota, yeah?
Yes. Okay, so we got somebody here in the chat who says, yeah, we are getting the semifinals next week. Okay, great. So then if we do get the semifinals next week, then that does leave us open for that inaugural Intercontinental Championship to happen on Raw Netflix.
That's the play. That's what they should do. It should absolutely be on Raw Netflix. They should have they're having 2 historic men's matches, the tribal combat Uce, and then they're having CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. On the women's side, they could give themselves 2 historic women's matches as well. The Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan finale, and then the women's Intercontinental Championship final here as well. Which if it is Io versus Dakota Kai, we're in for a treat. Like genuinely, like an incredibly good match if it's given enough time to breathe, because both of those women are fantastic. I'm of the mind that if it's between those two, that I'm actually going to go with Dakota Kai, mostly because I see bigger things for Io, like the Royal Rumble, like a women's main event at WrestleMania with Rhea Ripley, and I just don't think that she needs the Intercontinental Championship for that. On top of that, when I look at Io and Dakota Kai, Dakota Kai can't eat losses. Io can. Like, we saw her lose at Saturday night's main event to Liv Morgan, and that did nothing towards like damaging her stock. Like, Iyo Sky is just this perennial forever main eventer. She's there. She's made it to the summit at any moment. Like, look what they did. They put her down in the tag team division, and then they're like, all right, we need somebody in the main event. Iyo Sky, please come back, because that's the type of talent that she is. And I do foresee that they're going to benefit more from having Iyo Sky in the like proper main event scene rather than the women's Intercontinental Championship picture, while still using Iyo Sky's name to elevate the inaugural champion Dakota Kai. That's what I think is going to happen.
I don't hate it. Honestly, I don't hate it. I really, really don't. Because the fact of you saying like, oh, maybe there's bigger plans out there for Io, I'm on board with that. Like, I do want to see her and Rhea. I think that would be great. So I'm good with either option. If Dakota wins, I'm good with that. If Io wins, I'm good with that. Hell, if Lyra wins, I'm hella good with that. I also love Lyra a whole lot. But we are getting, by the way, Chad Gable versus Otis was confirmed for next week, as well as Damian Priest and the War Raiders versus Judgment Day. And then, yeah, they had also announced that Seth Rollins and CM Punk would be in the same place. They're going to have like one final meetup before their Netflix match. So there you have it. Monday Night Raw, ladies and gents, for December 23rd. Next week, we will be talking about the final Raw on USA. Santi, before we go, please let the people know where they can follow you, support you, check out your videos.
For sure. Thanks, Denise. Santi Zap. Just look it up on Google or on YouTube. My stuff will pop up. Just pick your platform of choice. If you like long form videos, definitely check out the YouTube. Check the Wrestling is Cool podcast. If you like wrestling shit posting, definitely check out the Twitter.
Hell yeah. Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we will be back here next week. As always, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/Denise Salcedo. All social media @ Denise Salcedo. Same thing. Just search me up and you'll find me wherever. Alrighty, guys. Have an awesome day, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas, Christmas Eve, and Merry Christmas, and anything else that you guys celebrate. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.